Good morning, good people, brothers, sisters, and beautifully defiant siblings in the movement. Welcome to the unapologetic voice of labor, equity, and action. This is CWA Our Power Radio Show, where we amplify the organizers, uplift the everyday workers, and honor the giants whose shoulders we stand on right here on KYOK 1140 AM and the all new 106.5 FM in the heart of Houston, Texas. If you're rolling through H-Town or just fired up anywhere in the world, stream us live at kyokradio.org on the CWA Strong app or catch the replay anytime by searching CWA Hour of Power on your favorite podcast player. Because this space, this time, it's about us. That's right, it's about us. We're talking union contracts, organizing victories, labor rights, human dignity, fair pay, and bold everyday resistance to injustice in all its forms. So whether you're on the job, in your car, at your kitchen table, or deep in the fight, lean in. Honk your horns if you stand with workers. Throw a fist up if you know your worth. Joining me today are the fire starters and the truth tellers, Sir Reginald Small, Tay Akins, David Marshall. So buckle up, beloveds, because the power we build together, that power is ours. Our union voices are ringing in every district from Alaska to Maine, Texas to Minnesota, Canada to Puerto Rico, because we don't play at CWA. The Communication Workers of America invite you to the 2026 National Human Rights Conference happening August 16th through 19th in Atlanta. Join union leaders and activists from across the country as we gather together to build power, advance justice, and fight for workers' rights. And this year's conference will be held at the beautiful Westin Peachtree Plaza, located in the heart of downtown Atlanta. To register, visit cwahumanrights.com. Again, to register, visit cwahumanrights.com. Don't miss this opportunity to connect, learn, and organize for a stronger, more just future. And we'll see you in Atlanta. Well, let me ask everybody in the room, in the studio this morning, before we even get started, who likes oysters?
I enjoy them.
I'm a Southern
Okay.
boy. I mean, who you can't miss me with an oyster. As long as you,
All
I
right.
prefer 'em
All
with a
right.
little heat on them, though, Errol.
All right. Now, I knew somebody liked oysters, fried oysters, char grilled oysters, oyster po' boys, fresh off the Gulf Coast. That sounds so good this early in the morning, doesn't
It
It sure
does.
does.
it? And if you don't eat them, you definitely know somebody who does, because across the South, across the Gulf Coast, oysters are more than food. They're jobs, culture, tourism, family business, and part of the identity of entire communities. So when oysters are in trouble, communities are in trouble. And that brings us to this week's spotlight in our series, Young Voices, Real Power. And so today I want to take a few minutes and talk about a young person proving the brilliance does not wait for age. And this young lady's name is Demi Johnson. Demi Johnson is a ninth grader, and she stepped into a problem that has frustrated the experts, the officials, and agencies for years along the Gulf Coast. And so the oyster population has faced major challenges from pollution, saltwater changes, storms, environmental damage, and shifting ecosystems. Entire communities have watched one of their most valuable natural resources decline. And while the adults have been out debating, studied, delayed, and spent money trying to solve the issue, here comes Demi Johnson, a young man with fresh eyes, no political baggage, no title, no $1 million consulting contract, just intelligence, curiosity, and determination. And Demi developed a solution that gained national attention and recognition, including being featured. Listen, guys, featured and honored through National Geographic. Let that sink in now. A ninth grader brought innovation to a problem that systems with budgets and power struggled to fix. Now, let's pause right there. How many times do institutions overlook young people? How many times are students told to sit down, be quiet, wait your turn? How many ideas never get heard because they came from someone, quote unquote, too young? Yet here we are, a young person saw a challenge and offered a pathway forward. That's not just a science story. That's a leadership story. That's a labor story. And that's a justice story because too often people in power ignore solutions when they come from the wrong zip code, the wrong age group, or the wrong background. So let me be clear. Healthy oysters systems mean economic impact. That means fishermen working, restaurants working, tourism's working, small businesses earning, families surviving. And so when natural resources collapse, workers feel it first. So Demi Johnson's work is bigger than oysters. It's about restoring opportunity. That's what organizing is too, solving problems that affect everyday people. And let's say something here, something else right here. How much money has the state of Mississippi and others spent trying to address Gulf Coast environmental and oyster related issues over the years? The studies, the committees, the meetings, the consultations, the reports, and still too many problems remain. Then a student, touch your neighbor and say, student, a student walks in with ideas and action. Sometimes the solutions isn't trapped in a boardroom. Sometimes it's sitting in a classroom. So this week, we salute Demi Johnson. To every young listener, do not let anyone convince you your age disqualifies your impact. To every adult listening, are you mentoring young people or dismissing them? To every institution listening, if you want innovation, stop ignoring the voices that haven't been heard yet. This has been Young Power Demi Johnson and the Gulf Coast Solution as part of our series, Young Voices, Real Power, the Next Generation of Organizing, right here on CWA Our Power Radio. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and pressing the listen live option. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Search for CWA Hour of Power on your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected. Share your thoughts and join the conversation. Up next, it is time for Tea with Tay. Good morning, Tay.
Good morning, Errol. Good morning, KYOK listeners, and good morning to my union siblings. So, this morning is Tea with Tay, and we will spill the truth, hot and no sugar added. And today's tea, it's boiling, it's hot. It may be a sensitive topic, but it is one that we need to talk about because I need somebody in Washington to explain something to me slowly. How is it that the minute a young person turns 18, suddenly the government says they're grown enough to register for the military service, grown enough to be sent into combat, grown enough to carry a weapon, grown enough to die for policies they didn't create, and let's be very, very honest, some that they barely even understand. But somehow, not grown enough to have guaranteed voting access and civic education. An 18-year-old barely knows who they are. Yet the government now wants to tell us they are mature enough to fight for this country. Since we like facts, the fact is the brain is not fully developed until 25. And that's not assumption or just a mother talking. It's information you can research on your own. In the early teen years, emotional and reward systems are very active. But an 18-year-old is ready for war? Make it make sense. So let me say this plain for the people in the back. An 18-year-old cannot even rent a car until they're 21 to 25. The same people who want to draft our children don't want to talk about the fact that they can't even run for major political office until US House 25, Senate 30, and President 35. I'm speaking not just as a citizen, but as a mother of an 18-year-old son and a 6-year-old son who are still learning life in real time, still discovering who they are, still navigating emotions, responsibility, identity, and the weight of becoming a man in a world that already asks so much of them. And because of that, I will not stay silent. At 18, we say that they're adults, but adulthood on paper is not the same as fully developed mind, lived experience, or emotional readiness. These are young kids who are still growing, still making mistakes, still learning how to process life's challenges. They're still learning their bodies, their minds, their place in this world. So, how can we, in the same breath, say they're ready for war, ready to carry a weapon, ready to make life or death decisions, ready to witness and endure things that will stay with them forever? I'm not against service. So, I want you to be clear on that. I am not against service. I'm not against honoring those who chose that path. But I am firmly against the idea of automatic draft that removes the choice, especially for young people who are still in the most critical stage of development. Because this isn't policy. No, this isn't policy. This is someone's child. This is my child. We cannot continue to treat our youth as both too young when it's convenient and old enough when it's time to send them into harm's way. If you truly value life, growth, and the future of our communities, then we must protect the space for our young people to fully become who they are before asking them to risk everything. I stand in love when it comes to my children. I stand in protection and I stand firm in my belief. 18 years old is not ready for draft. Now, hold on, because I know some folks get nervous when women like me start asking these questions, having these conversations. This isn't about disrespecting veterans. We honor those who served. This isn't about attacking military families. We respect sacrifice. This is about asking why working class children, Black children, brown children, rural children, poor children, children from neighborhoods with limited opportunity always seem first in line when it comes time for war, but last in line when it's time to talk about healthcare, college, housing, and good jobs. Funny how patriotism always comes with a bill for the poor. Now let's talk about these parents. What rights do us as parents have when our 18-year-old child is suddenly considered available for war? Legally, once they turn 18, they're adults. They're adults on paper. So let me make that clear. They're adults on paper. That means mama can't simply say no. Daddy can't just block it. The law recognizes the child as an adult. The child as an adult. But moral power, community power, family power, that still matters. Parents have the right to teach their children the truth before recruiters do, explain contracts before signature happens, discuss trauma, PTSD, disability, and life after war. Encourage education, trade programs, public service alternatives. Help them understand patriotism should never mean blind obedience because some recruiters, they sell dreams, but don't always mention the nightmares. Now, for the young people listening, yes, at 18 years old, you have rights too. You have the rights to ask questions. You have the rights to refuse pressure. You have the right not to be manipulated by flashy uniforms and polished speeches. You have the right to say, war for what? Who profits? Who is sending us? Do their children go to? And if there were a draft, there are legal processes like constituent obligation claims for people who moral or religious with moral or religious beliefs who oppose war. There are legal defenses, appeals, classifications, and due process rights. It is not as simple as show up and shut up. But let's go a little deeper. Why is it that at 18 they trust you with war, but not with power? They'll hand you a rifle faster than they'll hand you an economic opportunity. They'll send you overseas before they'll fix the school down the street from you. They'll call you brave in uniform, but ignore your unemployed background, unemployed back home. That's the T. And let's be crystal clear. My baby is not going to war for greed, not for oil, not for ego, not for politicians who never seen the battlefield themselves, not for billionaires whose children somehow always seem to avoid the front lines. If you want sacrifice, let Congress go first. If you want
Mm.
courage, let the war planners enlist first. If you want duty, start with the people cashing the checks. And one more thing before I go. If America can automatically track 18-year-olds for service, then America can automatically empower an 18-year-old for democracy. Register every eligible young person to vote, teach civics in every school, protect polling access, making their voices matter before asking them for their bodies. Because citizenship should come before conscription. Conscription. That's today's Tea with Tay. Stay loud, stay sharp, stay dangerous, and remember, somebody always wants your child to fight a war they have never lived through themselves. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to you, Errol. Like I said, that was a hot topic. So I know, Reginald, if you have something to say, or Errol, it's you. But I just want you to know this was a passionate one for me.
Oh, we heard that in your voice on this one right there. We did. We because it is something to think about. Tay, you have an 18-year-old son. I have a 17-year-old grandson that is about to be 18. So we have a lot to think about, and how this could affect our families.
Exactly. And these are our children. We know they're intelligent, but we know they're still learning themselves. They're learning
Hmm.
so much about themselves. And we talk about choice all the time. They should have a choice in what they want to do. And I'm going to agree with the fact that yes, if we can automatically find an 18-year-old to draft them, then we should automatically have all of these children learn about this in school, and then we should also have them automatically register to vote when they turn 18, right? It should
Of
happen just
course,
that quick.
Yeah,
of
that,
course.
that should be really simple. Tay, you have really poured a scorching hot boiling cup of tea this morning, and I feel a little teeny bit at a disadvantage here because what you did is you put that maternal piece in it that I can't hardly, I can hardly argue or even come behind you with it. But of course, you know me, I am going to come behind it. But I want to preface it with this: I'm not a parent. I don't have any children. I don't even have a pet. I have fish and they live outside. So let me just put that out there first. But you said something really, you said a lot of stuff there in your segment. And I just want to point out that we haven't invoked the draft since 1972 during Vietnam. But you said something that's really profound, that if the Selective Service requires automatic, that will make it automatic. And I believe December the 18th in 2026, if all goes as planned, eligible men will be automatically registered. But the thing there that you said about the voting, because of course voting is always important, that we don't want our people to be automatically registered to vote, but we will have them automatically registered for the Selective Service, which means that you could vote, you could register them to vote automatically and make that piece, participation and democracy easier. So to me, that is something that is definitely something to think about. We want to make one thing easier, but we don't want to touch the other subject to make that easier. Why is that? And I think we all know, we know the real reason to that. It's a form of voter suppression there. I want to add also that you touched on some things here about sacrifice and military service, and you wanted to be clear that you wanted to honor all sacrifice. Um, my great grandmother had four sons, all four served. And that one, my great grandmother had sons that served in World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam. All of that they served, and she lost one in World War II, her youngest son. And my grandmother herself lost her only son in Vietnam. And he wasn't drafted, he volunteered to serve. And of
Hmm.
course, he did not know what he was up against in that particular war, but the ultimate sacrifice was paid. He was lost in that. But it brings me to one thing here, that if our nation has to protect the nation in times of war, and it does happen, and it seems like right now we're in some type of, I don't know whether it's appropriate to say war or not, because I don't know whether it's an actual war, but nonetheless, we're in something. Where would we get the people from if we don't have the selective service process? Because we know that that process is there in case of national emergencies. And there is insufficient volunteer listings. That is where this comes into play in case we need it. And again, I preface it with, we haven't had that situation since the 70s. But where would we get the pool of people from?
Reginald, can I tell you how I feel about this personally? I feel like
Please.
people who continue to sign our children up, who avoid the battlefields themselves and have children as well, they need to be signing them up for this war, and I'm gonna put it in air quotations. They need to be signing their children up. The people who feel like that this is what we need are normally the people who do not go to the battlefields themselves. They sit in their offices while our children go to the front lines. And yes, I do believe that if you decide to honor your country, if you want to go and enlist, then that is your choice. But to force our children when you yourself have not even enlisted, that doesn't make sense to me. And we have plenty of capable candidates or people who can sign themselves up for this war that they believe in.
And I think a lot of them that don't want should just say they got bone spurs.
Oh, well, you know, you gotta have some humor. You gotta have a little humor, Errol. You must have it to make it through this. Um,
Right.
but there are some countries that not only require signing up, but there are some countries that actually require military service for young people as well. And we don't require that, like I said, unless there is a draft. But there is something in this new policy that's coming out in December that I wonder, are we skipping that as well? It says it will be eligible men. And now our military is also made up of women, but it will only be men that will be considered for this automatic secret service, selective service sign up. What do you think about that?
Well, I think what's going to happen with that, we're going to have a part two on this, and then allow David to gather some thoughts and share his veteran experience with us. And I think that he would be a great uh, person to talk on that subject matter. But as far as I'm concerned, whosoever will, let them come, because there are individuals that want to serve in the military. So please, yes, allow them to do that.
And then I want to be clear as well. Draft is needed at some times, but an 18-year-old, a child whose mind is still not fully developed, we should have an age limit, age range there, and 18 is way too young. And that is again my personal feelings because I've been around a lot of 18-year-olds. And again, I keep saying they are still finding themselves.
Yes.
Made a
Hmm.
point to say that they can't even run for office or any US or House seat or president, any of that until they're 25, 30.
So I wonder, Tay, I wonder, I don't know, this is not a statement, this is something I'm throwing out there, that age is the tender age where the actual organization can actually train you and mold you into what you want to be, because at that age you're still able to be trained. You're still
You're
able to be
impressionable.
impressionable at that age. So I
Hmm.
wonder, is that part of the part of the whole structure? That is the purpose. Because if you get to be 25 going into 30, well, you already done developed your sense of direction in which way you want to go, and you're kind of hard-headed at that point.
Yes,
I've
but
heard so many people say that the military finished raising them or actually
Hmm.
made them the man that they are, man or woman that they are accredited with being today. So I'm wondering, is that age, that tender age, strategic?
it may be strategic. So I'm actually listening to you. I hear you loud and clear, but that's why there's a choice.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why there's a choice because it's still things that, and because we're on national radio and my baby listens, it's still things that I'm teaching that young man. And I do feel like, some children are a little more advanced and developed than others at 18, and they may say, yeah, this is what I need. I need this structure. I need this foundation. I need,
Hmm.
and then you have other 18-year-old children who are still like, I'm terrified. I don't know about this stuff. It's not when you even mentally don't know yourself, how can someone mold you when you're afraid? They can't
Mm.
because you have to get past the fear first, and you need to develop your mind and understand these things. You need to be educated on these things. But if you automatically send them over, they don't have time to understand any of this stuff. So I understand structure, and I understand because I know some kids, they're ready. 18, they're going through the programs in school. They have the army recruiters that are in the high schools and talking to children and all of that, because I have my 16-year-old, he's the one who comes home with all of his army's US Army's things, and I have real conversations with him. And he may be more mature and understand things in a different light than my actual 18-year-old. So that's what I'm saying. Some children are not ready, so an automatic draft is harmful.
Mm.
I mean, of course you're not the first person to have this opinion. I mean, this is
Not at all.
oh no, this is an age-old opinion of,
Hmm.
most people. And to be honest with you, Tay, I'm grateful for the conversation today, even though I'm at a disadvantage because you pulled that maternal card out at the beginning of this. But I'm grateful because I've not heard it from the standpoint of someone who's actually raising a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old.
Well,
Yes.
I think we need to do a part two on this. We'll talk to David about that and see can he, we can come back and have a panel discussion. What y'all think about that?
I think that's a good idea. I just don't know what makes you think that David we can't finish this conversation without David or something. I think you throwing some kind of weight around here or something.
No, I am just going from his expertise of being a veteran. That's
Yeah.
all, and
He
a service member. And
he and he and he is indeed a Marine. I'm being facetious with him, but he is,
yes,
and he could add
yes.
something else to this. He could, for
And we
sure.
And
thank
what is
him
it the
for his
Marines they
service.
do? Say again, Tay.
I said, and we thank him for his service.
Yes, we do thank him for his service, and that Marine does more before 9 o'clock than many people do all day. All right. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and pressing the listen live option. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Search for CWA Our Power on your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected. Share your thoughts and join the conversation. Up next, we have the Marshall Minute with David Marshall. Good morning, David.
Good morning, family, and welcome to the Marshall Minute. At some point, enough is enough. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Because across this country, working people are feeling it. You feel it when you go to the grocery store and the prices are higher. You feel it when rent goes up again and again. You feel it when your check hits your account and it's already spent. People are working harder than ever and somehow falling further behind. So the question becomes, what happens when working people stop just feeling it and start acting on it? And more importantly, what happens when that action is organized through union power? When I said enough is enough, I meant that we are at a breaking point in this country. Working people are being stretched in every direction. You've got folks working full-time jobs and still needing side hustle and side jobs to survive. That's not how this system's supposed to work. There was once a time where one job could take care of a whole household. Now people are working multiple jobs and still choosing between bills. That's not just frustration. That's a system failing working people. And for younger workers, they're walking into that system already behind. They're dealing with higher cost of living than the generations before them. Their rent is high, their health care is expensive, and job security feels uncertain. And yet they're being told, you just got to work harder. But they're working hard. So when we say enough is enough, we're not just complaining, we're setting a boundary. We're saying we deserve better conditions, better pay, and a real voice in our workplace. So let's talk about what happens when workers reach this point and actually act together. History shows us clearly that when workers organize, things change. During the Memphis sanitation strike, those workers were dealing with unsafe conditions and low pay. They stood together and the entire country had to pay attention. They didn't just get attention, they got change. And more recently, the West Virginia teachers strike showed the same thing. Teachers across the state said enough is enough, and they walked out together. They didn't move individually, they moved collectively. And because of that, they won. That's the key word, collectively. Because when workers move together, everything shifts. Work slows down, profits are impacted, and leadership is forced to respond. This isn't random. This is organized. This is what unions like the CWA and the AFL-CIO have built over decades. And the facts back it up. Union workers earn higher wages on average. They're more likely to have health care, retirement benefits, and job protections. That doesn't happen by chance. That happens because workers come together and negotiate from a position of strength. Now, Here's the hard conversation. If things are this bad, why don't we see more people acting together? Why do we still see people supporting corporations that may not be aligned with worker interests? Well, for a lot of people, it's not that simple. People are trying to survive. They're looking for what's affordable, what's accessible, and what fits into their day-to-day life. But then there's another piece. People always don't believe their actions will actually make a difference. And we have to acknowledge another fact, something else, fear. People are afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of retaliation and afraid of standing alone. So instead of judging people, we have to understand what's holding them back. And we have to organize in a way that brings them in, not pushes them away. But let's take this a step further. What happens if workers, organized workers, decided to stop? Not just one group, not just one place, but across all sectors and across the nation. That would change everything. You would start seeing delays in services, supply chains would slow down, business would feel the impact almost immediately. Because at the end of the day, this entire economy runs on labor. And that's the truth we don't always talk about enough. Workers hold more power than they realize, but that power only works when it's united. That's why organization matters. That's why union matters. Because without structure, frustration stays just frustration. But with structure, frustration becomes action. So let's define success clearly. Success is not just making noise, but success is winning. And when I talk about winning, winning better wages, stronger contracts, job protection, and safe work environments. And beyond that, success is dignity. It's being respected on the job. It's being able to provide for your family without constant stress. It's knowing that your voice matters. And when workers win those things, entire communities benefit. So at this point in the minute, I want to open it up to the panel, and I'm going to kick it back to you, Errol, to take it from here.
Bring in Reginald, and let's talk just for a little while. We'll on this particular piece, and we are really closer to that breaking point now than we have ever been.
So, Errol, I don't know which breaking point you're talking about, but I like that enough is enough. I mean, we can feel the strain in households all across America. I mean, when you start talking about money and the stress of everything being more expensive, the rent, the electricity, and all of that, and what it takes to run a household. Families now are doing math at the kitchen table every month, or if not every other day, trying to decide what gets paid now and what doesn't, and what waits,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's going to be paid at all. But history teaches us something more. When pressure builds long enough, something has to give. The
Mm-hmm.
question is whether it becomes an organized action or silent suffering. I believe we said something a little earlier that people feel that they're alone in this, or they don't want to voice the strain that's on them. They're
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed by it because it appears that everyone else is moving along, continuing to do their same stuff, as if gas at being at $5 is not impacting them, as if the increase in the electric bill or the energy cost is not impacting them. But in reality, it is impacting the average household.
Yes.
Exactly. And I'm going to tell you, Reginald, you hit it right on the head the nail on the head when you said at the table, Budgeting it out, budgeting it out. I have a budget book because who told me when our parents talked about what they could afford and how it was back in the day? I'm like, Mama, don't complain. Don't you say when you say gas was 50 cent, I want to go back to 50-cent gas. I'm talking about a loaf. I was just looking at a loaf of bread in the store for $3.29. So let's be honest. Let's be honest. We scrape it together, but too many people have normalized this struggle. We try to laugh through it. We try to make the jokes. We try to joke through the debt and smile through the exhaustion. But being overworked and underpaid is not normal. Being loyal to companies that replace you in an email is not normal. At some point, enough really does have to be enough.
And that normalized stuff when I mean, at some point you stand up and say enough is enough. And I'm gonna stray off just a little bit as I can do sometimes. But I was at a hotel just not too long ago, and some of
Mhm.
you may have heard this, but I was at a hotel some time ago and I came outside. I had a friend call the Uber, or I thought it was an Uber or whatever. And there comes a car pull up to pick me up with nobody in the front seat. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but that still looks odd to me. That's what we call this strange stuff being normalized that
Mhm.
I couldn't grasp it. And I'm going somewhere with this. As
I
a
feel you.
as a union official, I already kind of question taking Uber over a taxi cab, but even with Uber, there is a person in the car that is benefiting from a salary. So I can go there. But to jump myself in a car that does not have a driver, where a recording is telling me to buckle up my seatbelt, and I done passed three taxi cabs on the corner. I'm sorry, I'm not going to ever get that normal. I'm not doing that again. And I only got in at that time because someone else was controlling the button as far as calling the Uber. And it became this thing that I needed to understand what was taking place. But that's normalizing something. I'm never going to get that normal that I'm passing up working people to go get in a car that doesn't have a driver. Now, does that make sense to you all?
Well,
No,
can I jump in here just for a second
Just a
before
second.
Tay gets started? Just a second. That is the same way I feel about self checkout.
Yes. Well, and I boycott self-checkout. I don't care how
I do
I
too.
got to stand in the line because it would be different if the store was giving me a discount, an incentive to
That's
use
right.
self-checkout. But
That's right.
you've gotten rid of the worker so that your profit margins can be higher and the cost of groceries have gone up. What am I getting out of that? I don't participate in that. That'll never be normalized to me. But of course, there are other people who think, oh, it takes too long. I'm in a hurry. Well, you better slow down, is what you better do before you look around and everything will be automated in a self checkout situation.
And then they have somebody up there with a point degree. You can come right here. You can come right here. Point degree.
I,
Point to this cash register. Point.
I
Go
become
ahead.
I become totally helpless in those situations, and they end up having to check me out to get me out of the line.
I thought I was the only one that
No,
did.
no.
Baby, I act so special.
When we start giving into that kind of stuff, where the corporations are getting richer and our people are without jobs, we need to turn in our union card because we're not standing for the right thing.
Hey, I just told a lady at the store when I was standing in the line and the light wasn't on, and she was like, "Oh, you want me to check you out?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. I am union and you need a job." Yes, ma'am. I
Oh,
am
they
union and
don't
you need a job.
understand that.
Come
That's
on,
the killing part,
come,
Tay.
come
They
check me
don't
out.
understand that.
And then even when you do like Uber Eats or DoorDash out here in Arizona, they have these little driving carts now. They put your food in it and it drives to you. And you have the option of whether you want to do the driving cart, which is no tip, or you want a driver to come where you can tip them. I will tip the driver. Again, we need these jobs. We need
Yes.
these jobs.
Hmm.
And I'm not getting it. And Reginald, I salute you because a car that drives itself will not be driving me. I'm
Mm-mm.
just not going to be able to do it. My anxiety is too high. But let's talk about it because I'm next gen. Let's say new gen.
Yeah.
They're too comfortable. They're watching it. They're like, yeah, this is the norm. And my kids, they're like, well, we like the little. It's cool to watch the car drivers. It's not cool to me. I just can't do that. But something that I also want to talk about is when the new generation they watch their parents work hard and still struggle. So where does that put them as far as their mindset? They watch people give decades to jobs and still get laid off. That's why it's so easy for them to say, I'll just go ahead and quit this job. So now many workers want more than a paycheck, which I understand. They want dignity, flexibility, fairness, and a voice. And I love that. And people may say it's lazy, but it's not lazy. That's growth. That's saying that they've seen and they're watching their parents. So yes, it's easier for them to say, I'll step off of this job because I want dignity. I want flexibility. I want fairness. But all of this stuff is becoming normal.
It is becoming normal, and that is a concern, and to some degree a healthy fear of mine, because there is a generation that doesn't know anything about longevity on a job, and there's no reason for them to know it. There's nothing to hold them. There's no pension. There's no investment into the employee. So I get why they're walking off a job, but they don't even know what a pension. They don't even know it. That's so far gone that they don't even know what to expect with a pension, or why they should be entitled to a pension. If you talk about pension to someone who's in their 20s, that's not even an option for them on probably 70% of the corporations they go and work for.
You're absolutely correct, unless it is a union job
Yes,
that.
and even
Yeah.
some union jobs, the pension in the traditional sense
Hmm.
has actually changed. So unions become very critical here, because where one worker asking for respect can be ignored, where you can ignore one person at a counter who's saying that I'm not going to self checkout, if the whole line gets involved and say, listen, bring somebody back to ring me up, that's where a united workforce demanding respect cannot be ignored so easily. And that is where collective power and collective bargaining matters the most. And the old word of solidarity, that's what matters. Standing in solidarity together, that's what matters.
And let me say this too right here. Fear is real, but fear has always been present. Workers in every generation had fear of losing the job, fear of retaliation, fear of backlash. But you got to have some courage. You have to just say, listen, I'm not going to, I'm fit to fight this right here. And that is how progress has always happened. You have to take a stand. There is something, I don't want to digress too much, but somebody said something about 20 some odd years ago about how individuals were acting. And here we are 20 years later, and some of the same stuff is going on. But in today's time, we have to stand up and make a difference in our communities. We
Yes.
we got to say some things about how people are acting and doing things, and I don't want to go down that road,
Well, you
that
use the
rabbit
word.
hole.
No, it's not a rabbit hole, Errol. And you used the word some time ago, fear. You talked about fear. Fear is a normal thing. When
Mhm.
something is new, you're in a dangerous situation. You're 35,000 feet in the air, and the plane feel like it's falling. That's an instinct of fear. That's a normal thing. But fear doesn't have to be crippling. It doesn't have to stop you from staying on your course and getting the job done. Courage is acting while fear is present.
And I tell you,
You go ahead, Tay.
now I was going to say, but you have to work through that fear. You have
Yes,
to
you do.
work through it at your pace.
Yes.
Work through that
Right.
fear.
And listen, I want to say I just got through reading a book on yesterday, and I know we done messed up every way, we done killed the run of show and everything, but I think this is something that our listeners need to hear. And yesterday I purposed in my one. Let me just go ahead and preface this. One of my childhood friends wrote a book, and I ordered it, and it got here, and she asked me the other day, she says, are you starting to read the book today, when the day that it got here? I say no. I say tomorrow morning, when after my prayer time, after I get my cup of coffee, I am going to read your book. And my intention was just to read a few chapters and then come back to it and stuff like that, right? And so the book that I actually read in one day, just in a few hours, is called "Life Ain't Fair, Win Anyway," and it's by Tawana J. Everhart. And one of the things that she was talking about was you got to get off the edge. A lot of people just stay on the edge because it's safety, and I think sometimes people even feel that there's safety in fear. But one of the things that she said was you got to get out there, and she gave 7 dynamic principles in her book. And all day yesterday, it just had my attention. It grabbed my attention, and yesterday I took the time out to talk to her about uh, her writing and what she did yesterday. And that's where we got life ain't fair, but we can win anyway. Fear is gonna be there, but we can win anyway. We win when the workers win. We win when the communities win. We win when we come together. We win when we have better wages, because better wages mean stronger neighborhoods, and healthcare means healthier families. Schedules with dignity mean parents can be present with their children. And this goes beyond the workplace. And we are really talking about the human rights initiatives that are really going on. You cannot have 2 and 3 $7.25 an hour jobs and try to take care of a family, try to raise these 16, 17-year-old boys, and then they be productive citizens and don't get into any trouble. You have okay, I'm sorry. I went all the way there.
Well, I mean, you're talking about what true success actually looks like. And it looks like stronger contracts, real raises, safer workplaces. I mean, and workers understanding their own power. That's a win. That's what success is.
Yes.
And it looks
Yes,
like it
that's a
also looks
win.
like people stopping the habit of settling for less when they know they deserve more.
Wow. You can say that one more time. Stop settling for what? Less.
Settling for less when they know they deserve more.
That's something to think about right there. That is something to think about right there. That I think, you know what? Before we get into trouble, I think let's close out right here. And then we will pick this back up on next week when everybody's back in the office. But this guys, this was a great conversation. We gotta pick this back up as we come down to the final minutes of the show. The Communication Workers of America invite you to the 2026 National Human Rights Conference happening August 16th through 19th in Atlanta. Join union leaders and activists from across the country as we come together to build power, advance justice, and fight for workers' rights. This year's conference will be held at the beautiful Westin Peachtree Plaza located in the heart of downtown Atlanta. To register, visit cwahumanrights.com. Again, to register, visit cwahumanrights.com. come. Don't miss this opportunity to connect, learn, and organize for a stronger, more just future. And we'll see you in Atlanta. An hour is not long enough to be with you, and a week is too long to be away from you. You have been tuned into the CWA Human Rights Hour Power broadcast. I hope something you heard today has inspired you to take action toward creating positive change in the world. Every person has the power to make a difference, no matter how small. And by working together, we can create a world where human rights are respected and valued. So I encourage each of you in the listening audience to reflect on your role in promoting human rights to effect change in your communities and beyond. Know that you are not alone in your quest for a more just and equitable world. When faced with injustice, it can be easy to lose hope and give up. But remember, justice may be slow like the truth, but when it finally comes, it will stand. Until next Thursday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, right here on KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM, KYOKradio.org. See you next week.